Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. Let me know in the chat if you are back. Um, Let me know if you are back and ready to get started. I have an update refresh of my tea. All right, thank you for letting me know you're back and ready. Great. So in our first segment, we really focused in on getting clear on what it is that we need to release from last year. And now we're going to orient towards the process. And I call it a process because it's a process, the process of reset. Welcome. All right. And so, what does it actually mean to reset? We'll talk about what a true reset looks like and feels like. We will also talk about what are the things that get in the way once we do reset of consistently moving into action with whatever it is that we've intended for ourselves, and the things that keep us stuck in the first place. And then we'll talk about, well, what are the actual resources, practices, and even engage in a few of those. We've been camera off for the most part and mic off for most of it. At the end of this process, I would like to give us some time to unmute and to really talk and to share our voices and share our experiences as well. So I'm going to try my best to not spend too much time in the content and the sharing so that we can have that. And so if that's something that you would like to do, be on camera or be mic on, letting you know that we'll have that opportunity on the second half of this portion. And if you had additional questions for me about therapy, about wellness, all of that, even if we hit our 3 o'clock time, if you still have questions, I'll be on for as long as we need in order to talk, to answer those questions for you. Okay. So just checking in. How are you feeling? Folks are saying they're back and ready. I'm going to share my screen again so that we can get into the content of this next part here. And really, I'm starting with what's the reason why we haven't met our goals. So part of the reason we want to release and reset is so that we can meet whatever goals that we have or intentions that we've identified for ourselves in this new year. Let's start with the reasons that we often haven't met our goals. And it's really a list of some items, like things that you have tried before that maybe haven't even worked despite having good intentions. So let's see. Present. Okay. And share. Okay. So taking a look at this list, one reason that you haven't met your goals yet, sometimes we don't know what to do. That's the first thing. We don't actually know what to do. We've tried lots of different things, but it hasn't actually worked. So take a look at this list and let me know, have you tried any or all of these things? How has it worked out for you? Or has it not worked for you? So I'll give you a moment to take a look at this. Let me know in the chat. Which of these things have you tried that just hasn't really worked for you yet? And so, just to share a little bit about some of these things, sometimes we think, well, yep, I'm coming into the new year. I'm going to do all this stuff, self help, get articles. Maybe I'm going to take a webinar. I like to think of this as a little bit different than a standard webinar because we're really engaging with your process. But sometimes we're like, well, I'm going to learn some new information. Or maybe if you are coming from a Christian faith system, maybe you're like, prayer and Bible study the stress away. Or maybe if you're coming from another transition, you have other practices that you engage in to try and move through it, and it just hasn't quite worked out yet. Maybe you have a group chat and you're like, well, let me share everything, and that hasn't quite worked out. Or, you know what, let me take a few steps back and share less, keep things to myself. Some folks just say, let me grit and bear it and just keep moving through, close my eyes, and just keep pushing through no matter what. You may have even gone so far as to say, you know what, no excuses. I'm going to create schedules. I'm going to do habit trackers. I'm going to create punishments for myself if I don't pass this thing, or if I don't do what I need to do, or I don't stay consistent. Um, or you may have identified, you know what, it's not just me. Actually, it's my friends or my family. And you have developed your come to Jesus moments with them and try to really get them to understand your needs. And if they could just make this shift, it would make things better for you. All these kinds of things can show up. I'm hearing done most of them. Yep, me too. Right. The no excuses approach for sure, creating this intense game plans that punish you somehow when you can't follow through. Yeah, and the grit and bear it. And so all of these things and more are things that I have personally done and tried, are things that the clients that I work with often report to me. And so you're not alone in taking this approach. And one of the reasons we move towards these practices or these approaches as the way, um, is because we don't actually have clarity on what truly heals, on what actually allows us to take sustained action towards our goals, what actually allows them to ourselves to achieve those goals. And so we're going to talk about that. And I'm hearing, yep, come to Jesus moment, grit and bear it. That's definitely part of it. Okay. So, let us talk a little bit. Let's get grounded actually in this work as we move forward. So if you struggle to consistently engage in your self-care, which you're like, hey, I know I need to do self-care, and the nurturing practices that support you to achieve your wellness goals, this is a quote that I think is important for us to sit with and unpack a little bit. And it's by Tricia Hersey of the NAP Ministry. Let me know in the chat, has anyone heard of the NAP Ministry or Tricia Hersey or her book, Rest is Resistance? Um, Let me know in the chat, but I'm going to read this. It says, loving ourselves and each other deepens our disruption of the dominant systems. They want us unwell, fearful, exhausted, and without deep self love, because you are easier to manipulate when you're distracted by what is not real or true. Okay, I'm going to read that again. Loving ourselves and each other deepens our disruption of the dominant systems. They want us unwell, fearful, exhausted, and without deep self love, because you are easier to manipulate when you're distracted by what is not real or true. So, as we round into this, there's a part of this that might resonate and feel true. There's also a part of it is like, well, who's they? And so, in many ways, and this is not necessarily the focus of this experience, in many ways, they are the systems, the policies, and practices that come along with colonialism. But they can be societal structures and systems that don't serve our well being and that require us to work and produce even when we're exhausted and tired, and require us to be human doings versus human beings, right? But they can also be cultural expectations that no longer line up with your values. Maybe family expectations of you that no longer line up with the way that you understand yourself, other people, or the world, or this journey that you're on, right? And it can also be internalized versions of that. So our own pressures that we put on ourselves to produce, or to be perceived at a certain way, or to produce at a certain level. So fill in the blank as to what they means to you. But many times, many of us have theys in our life that tell us we have to be on this hamster wheel of constant production rather than moving and operating from a place of loving ourselves and each other. Okay. So, from this place of loving ourselves and loving each other, we know self-care is important. We know that we need to do this work, but we really struggle to do it for all of the reasons that we may have identified in the past. Um, and now I want to sit and talk about what are the things that get in the way of doing it differently. Okay, so let's start with life stressors. So, one of the things that get in the way of living the life that we want to live or releasing the things that we mentioned we want to release in our life is life stress, right? The new year rolls around and work didn't stop, family obligations didn't stop necessarily. The storylines that have been rolling around in our minds haven't really stopped doing the work of causing us stress in our lives. And so we have these ongoing life stressors. We all may also have grief and suffering, whether that's ongoing grief and suffering from the past or from unexpected losses. For me, 2022 was one of those years of extreme loss. We had gone from not having a death in the family for a while to having three major losses in my personal family, along with individuals that I've grown up around, and it was a really difficult time. So, despite my own personal goals for our business or for my wellness, grief and suffering really were at the forefront in that year. Another aspect that I call life stress is this lack of alignment or the level of alignment we might have with our valued identities and our environment. So I will name this as a Black woman. One aspect of my identity or my physical presence is my hair and head wraps. You see, I'm wearing a head wrap now as a member of my own business, right? This is a head wrap friendly environment. When folks come to therapy with me, I say, hey, this is a bonnet friendly environment because I understand, right? And I understand these things. But when you're in a space where folks don't understand an aspect of your identity, whether it's physical or otherwise, there's this stress, this anxiety of having to be or perform rather than being who you truly are and showing up as your full authentic self. Now, I'm talking about a head wrap or a bonnet, but you may also, it may be related to your gender identity, your sexual orientation. And if you're in spaces, chronically in spaces where folks don't validate your experience, guess what? That's going to weigh on your nervous system. That's going to weigh on the way that you show up in the world, right? And so there are many other identities that we may hold. Our spiritual or religious beliefs may show up here. Our, again, I mentioned gender, our gender expression may show up, our race, our cultural values, and other identities that we may hold as well. And then it's very important the collective suffering. I've heard a quote, and I can't exactly recall where I've gotten it from, but I believe it came from the book Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown, and she talked about in the book how one of her mentors shared, we have never been exposed to such unwavering access to collective suffering. When we open our phones, our laptops at any given time, we have access to the full weight of the world's suffering and trauma in ways that we've never had access to before. It would be in times past where things would be happening, it would be relevant to the folks in that corner of the world, and people in another area of the world wouldn't hear about it ever, if not many weeks or years later. And now we have access to all of it. So these are all the things that can weigh on us and bring us down. Trauma, and I talked a little bit about trauma and what that can look like, but it can be an acute trauma. My definition of trauma is any experience where you feel overwhelmed plus alone. And that level of overwhelm and aloneness has overwhelmed your nervous system's capacity to automatically filter out what information was relevant, what information wasn't relevant. So I'm not the person that's going to define to you, oh, that wasn't a traumatic experience because it wasn't one of the big T things that we name. But you may have had some of those big T traumas, that, as they call it. You may have also had an experience that from the outside looking in seemed normal or fine, but because of your lived experience up to that point, that experience was traumatic. So, an acute experience, it can also be complex experiences. So, it may not be just one moment that was where you were overwhelmed or alone, but it was lots of moments where you had not enough support and not enough information for a long enough time. So that often happens in childhood. Maybe you weren't full on check the box neglected, but you spent way more time alone than you needed to, or you were constantly guilt or shamed for just being who you were in this world, right? That can happen quite a bit. Over time, that collective experience can show up and be stored traumatically in our bodies. And then intergenerational trauma. So we're dealing with traumas that are being passed on from generation to generation. That might be related to substances, that could be related to experiencing a certain trauma, and maybe related to being under resourced or poverty or related to finances. And it may be something that was directly transferred. So this happened to my mom, and then my mom did it to me, or it can be less so and more ancestral, where it's not that you've experienced the same thing that your parent has, but you were very much impacted by what happened to them. Or not even them, but your grandparents or your great grandparents. Third, three and four generations down the line, our bodies and our nervous systems and our DNA can still hold the memory of those experiences. And we're not going to unpack that today, but if you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer a little bit more around some of the DNA level storage of traumatic information. And then vicarious trauma. So I work a lot with helping professionals, and we oftentimes experience not our own trauma, but just from constantly hearing the trauma that our clients go through, that can also leave us with experiencing symptoms of trauma. So these are all the things that we're contending with on a daily basis that make it hard for us to move forward on the goals that we set out for ourselves and the intentions that we've set. And so it's important to understand that. So some other things that can tend to show up that I notice is confusion, right? So those of us, especially, like I said, I work with a lot of helping professionals. I work with a lot of folks who move towards information. They're learning, they want to gather this information on what to do, what to heal. They're not just sitting, hey, it's above me, I don't know what to do. Right? They're trying. But as we're amassing all of this information, we get confused. Okay, I know what to do, but I don't know how to do it. How do I organize all the things that I'm learning in a way that actually supports my well-being? Right? And then when we don't don't act on it or don't get it right, then we experience the guilt, the shame. We say, hey, it's me. Maybe I don't deserve wellness, or I don't deserve peace, or I don't deserve love, or I'm not worthy of this thing, or I'm not good enough, right? And we shame ourselves. And then all the energy and the excitement that we have, the energy is kind of gone out of that. And we're kind of stuck. And to that, I like to always name insight is helpful, insight is beautiful, but insight alone is not enough. And one of the reasons healing insight is called healing insight is because of this, is you need insights that actually heal, that allow you to disconnect from the clutter and the confusion of the 70,000 plus thoughts that go through your brain on a daily basis and move that into action. And how do you move that into action? Through heart work, head, heart, action. That is the process. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that head, heart, action framework for actually being able to move into action in your life. And then this next piece of loneliness. So, for the past several years, I've been able to provide individual therapy for clients, and the work we've been able to do is nothing short of amazing and transformative. And some of the things that have come up as we've gone through this process is some of the things that have come up are one, this feeling of, well, now that I'm healing and I'm on this journey, I'm starting to feel isolated from the people around me, from the people that I love, my friends, my family, but they're not doing things in a in the way that they're not seeing things in the way that I'm seeing it now. Or they have ways of doing things that just don't align for me anymore. Right. And so we begin to feel even more isolated. We may have even come in because isolation was part of it, right? Maybe we're experiencing social anxiety, struggling to make friends in our 30s and 40s. Once we leave school, that can be really difficult. Um, but there's this cycle breaker syndrome that I've really identified, which is when you are someone who's recognized, hey, I got trauma and it's been handed down from generation to generation. I want to heal that. When you engage on that journey of breaking a cycle, it can become lonely. And sometimes we mistakenly think that loneliness is a sign that we're doing it wrong, or that we are not good enough, or that we're being punished. But really, that loneliness is a sign that you are moving into uncharted waters and you're moving into uncharted territory. And so, of course, it's going to feel lonely. But if you don't have access to supportive people who can continue to affirm you along this journey, people who are going through the journey as well and who get it, and people who know how to help you move through to actually come out on the other side, then it can really be a struggle. And so, with that, it's important to have social support and community along your path. Okay. So, I just said a whole bunch of stuff. I want to pause here for some thoughts. What is coming up for you? What questions do you have? Let me know what questions are coming up for you when you think about your goal for 2024, or for your life, your intentions. And when you reflect on the different things that can get in the way of accomplishing your goals for your wellness, for your life, what comes up? What are the questions that you have? Is there any one area of this that really stands out for you that's been showing up for you the most? What have you done to try and overcome this? And some folks wanting to know if I'm going to put information in the chat if you want to sign up. Yeah, I will definitely do that now. So if you're interested in a consultation, you can always go to our website, yourhealinginsight.com, and then to schedule that consultation is just heading to our contact us page. Um, the other thing is, if you're like, hey, I've already heard enough, I'm ready to go ahead and schedule. At the end of this, I will also provide a direct link to directly schedule with with a member of our team, and I'll provide some information on which clinicians are accepting clients right now and things like that. So we'll do that at the end as well. Okay. I want to I'm hearing some of this, I'm just seeing some of the comments just saying deep and refreshing, the raw truth. Love it. And just life stressors are my Achilles heel. Yeah, absolutely. When we're trying to make these broader life goals, we're trying to accomplish them, life doesn't stop. And so how do you balance the life stressors while you're making progress on your deeper goals? And then hearing just feedback on the little T experiences sure do add up. Yes. And so one of my biggest goals in the therapy room, or really with anyone that I operate with, is turning the volume down on the guilt and shame that we often experience, because what our society doesn't understand yet is that something doesn't have to be a big T trauma for it to deeply impact us. We don't even have to experience something directly in order for it to deeply impact our nervous systems. And so the little T experiences definitely add up. Okay. And so this makes so much sense. I have a vision for the changes or improvements I want, but I don't know how, and that paralyzes any forward movement. It's easier to put my energy towards other things, usually for other people. Yeah. And you know what? To that, I would say our nervous system is so beautiful in that way that even if there's a storyline in there that says, hey, I'm not worthy or I'm not able for whatever reason to move into action on my goals for myself, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to help you practice these skills anyway. And I'm going to help you practice these skills by doing it for other people. And so if you're realizing to yourself, I pour so much into other people, but not myself, I want to encourage you or invite you to consider it this way. What if it's just practice? Practice for the day when you update those storylines, or for whatever reason it becomes more accessible for you to offer that love, that support, that encouragement to you. Okay. So what's the solution, right? We're contending with life stress, we're contending with trauma, we're contending with this confusion of not knowing what to do, we're contending with loneliness. How do we actually address these challenges in a real way? And I think it can be summarized into two categories of support. And it's this. It's holistic mental health. So mental health practices that incorporates all layers of who you are on a physical, energetic, emotional, mental, wisdom, or intuition level, and a spiritual level as well. And we can unpack, if you have specific questions, we can unpack more about those layers of self and how it can operate. But being able to incorporate all layers of self as well as all domains of functioning. So there are these parts of who we are, but there are also the ways in which all of these parts interact with the things that we do. The way that it interacts with our personal growth, our finances, our health, our romantic relationships, our social relationships. How do all of these layers interact? So sometimes when we receive support, we just get, for instance, like therapy. Oftentimes, traditional therapy models, they might provide you with emotional or mental support for these things that we go through. But can you engage with the spiritual as well? Because that's an important part of your mental health. Or you may receive, oh yeah, this coping skill. Let me do the, let me create a habit tracker, or let me cognitive behavioral therapy is a popular form of therapy. Let me think about my thoughts and my feelings and how it connects to behavior. But what about my energy levels? Because I'm experiencing depression. And when we don't realize we have a whole energetic self, we try to CBT our depression away, and then it doesn't work and we blame ourselves. But when we understand we have an energetic self as well, then we recognize and are able to use the practices that are designed to shift our energy and not have to just focus on our thoughts or our emotions. Or if that's not something that you want to do, we're not forced to move towards meditation, for instance, which is engaging the physical, but not necessarily the energetic, the intuition, or the spirit. Okay. So, that's holistic mental health. And then the other thing is embodiment. So, at its core, embodiment means refusing to alienate or objectify any part of myself as something that needs to be eliminated or subjugated, as accepting myself, my whole self, for who I am. Embodiment also means being able to be in our bodies as we're going through things. So one of the things that can happen when we have something difficult, we may have experienced it to a small extent when we were engaging in release practices, and we're like, "Ooh, like this is hard." Like there are parts of this that I don't even remember. I want to move away from that stuff. When we move away, one of the things that we do is we disconnect from our body. Some folks, and let me know if this is you, if you'd like to. Some folks are like, yeah, I have thoughts, I have feelings, but what am I feeling my body? I don't know. You say, well, where do you feel that in your body? I have no idea. I don't know what's in my body. Oftentimes, one of the ways we survive all of the stress that we've experienced is by disconnecting from one or potentially all of these layers of ourselves. And so embodiment means coming back home to all of these layers of ourselves as we're going through what it is that we're going through. Okay. All right. So let's get into our practice for this season, this part of our program, the reset. We already talked about holistic wellness being part of these being, um, we've talked about holistic wellness and holistic mental health, meaning that we consider all these layers of ourself as we move towards our mental health. We are not going to go bit by bit for each of these layers as we assess those domains of wellness, but we are going to take a look at the domains of wellness. And if you're interested in really getting into the nuance of these things, our group coaching program that's coming up really is designed to focus in on this stuff. So let me know if you're interested in that. But this is what we're going to do. It's called the Wheel of Life, a holistic wellness audit. And so the Wheel of Life is really a great tool to help you better understand where you are right now and what you can do to rebalance areas of your life. And so you can think about each of the 8 categories that are below here, and you're going to rate them from 1 to 10 in terms of how closely they align with what you want for yourself. So if you don't have the workbook, it's okay. If you have a journal, you can just draw a circle. You don't even have to draw the circle, but I do think it's interesting to kind of see it laid out in this way. But we'll review these categories of growth. And as I'm talking about them, I'll also offer some space for you to identify where are you in this area of your life. Okay. And from there, we'll talk about what are the specific things that you can do based on where you are at to help you accomplish your goals, your wellness goals for the year? Because one of the things we tend to do is like a cookie cutter, like, oh, I need to do this, this, and this, and this. But are the things that you need to do based on where you're actually at? Or are they just based off of what someone else has told you or something like that? Okay, so let's get into it. I I want to know, let me know in the chat. Would you like just some time on your own to go ahead and fill out where you're at in each of these areas? Or would you like me to walk you through it as we go? I'll wait for some feedback before I set our timer. So let me know on your own time. I'll put some music on, or I can walk you through this process step by step. Walk me through it step by step. Let's see. Walk through. Okay, cool. All right, so let's walk through it then. Getting started, we'll start with this area of health, right? So our health is related to our physical well-being, but it is maybe related to our physical health. So do we have any medical conditions right now? It may be related to areas of exercise or movement, nutrition. One of the things that I like to think about with health or physical health is, even stretching. To what capacity am I able to stretch my body or sense into my physical self? And to what extent is my body able to meet my daily needs? Okay. So, of course, our health can also relate not just to our physical health, but to our mental health as well. Do I have any specific diagnoses such as depression or anxiety? Are there specific traumas? But when I think about mental health, oftentimes, sometimes our diagnoses are related to genetics and things like that. And sometimes our diagnoses, the symptoms that we're experiencing, are realistic responses to unrealistic situations or circumstances that we've been placed into. So if you've taken a look at your stressors and you're like, listen, there's so much on my plate, of course your body is going to respond by anxiety, by having to juggle multiple things at once and have lots of different feelings squishing up against each other. That makes sense. And if you've been doing that for quite some time, of course, your body might try to slow you down on purpose by bringing in depression, right? It's always important to speak with a mental health professional or a medical professional as you're making decisions about a formal diagnoses, but just kind of naming that there. When we say we don't have mental health, um, are we saying that there's something going on, or are we saying that we're navigating a lot of different things and our body is communicating with us how difficult it is? Okay. So just framing it in that way, if that feels supportive to you, but 0 to 10, how do you want to label your health? Friends. So thinking about your friendships. Do you have friendships that are able to one, do you have friendships, people that you communicate with on a daily or a weekly or a monthly basis in a regular way? Do you have people that know about your day-to-day life? But also, do you have people that you can speak to about deeper challenges or your deeper goals that can affirm you in the ways that you need or hold you accountable in the ways that you need? But also, are you a good friend? Do you reach out to people? Do you um follow up with them? Do you have a sense of belonging where you don't have to put on airs in order to be around them? You can be yourself. That's friendships. And in this area, it's not necessarily about the number of friends you have, but the quality of friendships that you have as well. Do you have friendships that can feel like mentors as well? That can be a piece of this. So, relationships, and here we're really zooming in on romantic relationships. What sense do you have of your romantic relationships? 0 to 10, what shows up for you? What does communication look like? But also, what does it feel like to be in the presence of a romantic partner if you are partnered? And if you're not partnered, how does that feel to you? Maybe that's right where you want to be in this season. And so, yeah, this is your ideal sort of level 10 experience. Or maybe you're not partnered in this season, and that's something that brings grief or worry for you, kind of just labeling where are you 1 to 10 in this area. Or maybe you want to focus in on how am I showing up in my romantic relationship versus how is the relationship feeling overall, whichever way you want to label that, kind of just putting what number comes to mind rather than trying to analyze, if that makes sense. The next category is recreation. And so, what things are you doing for fun? Do you have regular practices along with your work? Do you have things that you do that are not for work, that are not money making ventures necessarily? Or maybe money making ventures, but that primarily feel like fun? Do you have hobbies and things that you can work on? And do you have enough time to engage with those hobbies? Also, even within your work life, are there aspects of your work life that feel fun or feel like recreation? And is there balance in your recreation? So maybe you're like, I really like doing, outside movement activities, but I really don't like sitting still. Or I recognize that I maybe like art activities and I do like to express myself creatively, but the idea of being more active feels like a challenge. That's an example. spirituality. And so again, I don't define what is spiritual for one person or another, but when you sit, but a basic definition is connecting to something bigger than yourself. And where are you in that area? Ranging from I have no spiritual beliefs in particular, and I'm not interested in that, and so I feel fine and fulfilled. Or, you know what, there's a longing in my heart for something deeper, but I don't know. Or maybe you've come out of a specific faith community, and because of the hurt or harm that was caused to you, you've kind of washed your hands with it, and you're not sure that you still want to connect anymore. Or you're still a part of those communities, but it's causing you pain. Those are some things. But maybe you're in a spiritual place where you are in a season where your spiritual practices are supporting you and your mental health, and you feel connected to this higher power. And not only that, you're able to help bring connection um, and expand that connection within the communities that you care about. So, 0 to 10, what's the number that feels right for you? Okay. You may also choose to label this based on, like, oh, my consistency in gathering with other folks that have similar spiritual beliefs as I do. Or, for instance, if you're someone who reads a prayer or engages in meditation as part of that, how often you're doing those things. Um, so let's see, career. So 0 to 10, how are you feeling about your career? Is your career really aligned with the things that you want for yourself? Are you able to live out your purpose or your vocation through your career? Are you financially being compensated what you feel you deserve? Or are you financially being compensated what you need in order to meet your needs? And career, are there areas of your career that you haven't explored? Is there a business that you're waiting to start that just in the back of your mind that you really want to move forward with? Okay. And then finances. And so, again, when you talk about finances, do you have what you need? Are you able to operate from a place of abundance? How much stress is your finances causing you on a daily basis? How much do you think about your finances? Um, are there money stories that you're telling yourself that are maybe even being handed down from your parents or from your culture or your society that line up and really support you in your financial health, or that don't line up? Okay. And then this last category is personal growth. And that can be a big one. But ultimately, when you think about, hey, where you're at now versus where you were last year, are you moving forward or are you moving backward with whatever you consider to be personal growth? Have you been able to enhance your understanding of yourself and the reason you do the things that you do? Have you been able to enhance your ability to control your actions, your thoughts, that show up in when different things happen? So rate your personal growth from 0 to 10. And so I did a whole bunch of talking. So I just want to offer a few minutes for you to sit with each of these categories, write them out, write down any notes that are coming up for you. I'll give you a moment to do that. And of course, sharing in the chat anything that came up for you. Okay. And so, in the interest of time, I'm going to talk about, well, what are the resources that are actually going to support you? Well, throwing out some ideas for things that can support you. And then I want to have some time for us to be mic on, camera on, if you would like to, or either or, to share what has your experience been so far? What are some things that you feel that you will want for yourself that you'd like to identify here? Um, and and then we'll go from there, and I'll talk more for those of you who are interested specifically in specific offerings that we have. I'll talk about, options for getting involved. Okay, so moving forward now that you've identified where you're at in each of these categories, it can be helpful to take a look at them holistically, right? Um, and what I mean by that is, do you have mostly fives and one area is a nine, or mostly twos or threes and a five, right? So begin to assess for yourself, or is it all over the place? Is one category standing out as really, working well? Or do things feel in balance and in flow? And take a moment to just notice what insights, what curiosities come up for you around the why of some of that. Also, take a moment to assess, is there any clarity coming up on what it is that what is actually in my best interest to focus on this year? Because another thing that tends to hold us back is we create these goals, again, that are focused on what other people think we should be doing, or what we think other people think we should be doing, or what we should be doing, rather than, hey, what's actually showing up as needed in my life, or what is it that I actually want for myself? And so, as you take a look at where you're at in each of these areas, is there one area that would be most important for you to make progress on this year? Or one area that's really different from all the others, and that bringing things into balance, if you could bring it into balance, it could have a positive impact on your life. And you may even say, okay, well, I realize that the reason I'm struggling here is because I don't actually have the support that I need or the knowledge that I need to move through. Is that the area where I need to focus in on in therapy, for example? Okay. So I'm going to go through now and talk about different options for support. And with this awareness of what it is that you want and what you want to focus in on, you may get some ideas for things that you want to do. I'm not going to go through every practice. I'm just going to briefly talk about what the practices are. And so you can kind of jot down, oh, yep, I think I need this. Ooh, I think I need that. And then we'll open it up for overall discussion to talk about your experience, what your needs are, and I'll be able to provide some additional support. Okay, so let's talk about holistic wellness resources to support you. And this just has the broad category of mind, body, soul. Of course, when we're working together, we get into a lot more detail. But here are some strategies that can support you. If you've noticed, is in the category of mind or personal growth, you really want to make some improvements. Okay. So listing out all your thoughts non-judgmentally. Sometimes we think if we pay attention to this thought, it's going to grow, it's going to control me. And that can be true, but there's something powerful about listing out all of your thoughts, getting it out of your head and onto paper, that actually releases the stronghold that they have on you. And then once you kind of see them on paper, some of the thoughts, that's all they needed. They needed to be witnessed and then they disappear. But also, sometimes we identify patterns and we get more clarity by moving towards our thoughts. Okay. The other thing that we can do is explore parts. And so this is also something that where one-on-one therapy is a really powerful place to do this, exploring parts of ourselves. So sometimes we have thoughts or challenges, and when we get to the root of the challenge, we realize that it was our inner child. It was something that we went through at 5 or 6 or 10 or 15, that hurt that was never healed, that um, fuels the thinking that we have in today's day, or the challenge that we have in today's day. And so, can we begin to identify it? Or maybe it's an inner critic, someone who's saying, oh, you're never going to get there, or, you can't really do it. And by going in and assessing, we realize, wait a minute, that voice is not mine. That's the voice of my father, who always spoke harm into my life or spoke words of discouragement over me, and I've internalized that voice. Or maybe that's coming from societal expectations. My body doesn't look the way my body is supposed to according to society. And so I've internalized this inner critic. But we also have our wise one, those thoughts that say, hey, you're going to make it. The thoughts that say, this too shall pass. Or the thoughts that say, yeah, this sucks right now, but we're going to be able to turn that into wisdom and resiliency. We get more clarity on that. And again, through therapy, we don't just list out the thoughts and become aware of it. We can cultivate our ability to turn up the volume on the voice of the wise one, often through spiritual practices, intuitive practices, and trauma processing things as well to support us. And then this next piece, actually processing those stressful or traumatic memories in therapy. So saying, hey, this thing happened to me. It didn't just disappear. I see where it's showing up in different areas of my life. I've shared this a few times now, but therapy is a really great place to finally release that part of the story so that you can live the life and manifest the intentions that you've actually set. Okay. So body-based practices. One of my favorite things to do is to move into body. And so for those who work with me, I often say, where do you feel that in your body? And the reason is 70,000 thoughts a day is a lot to wade through. And whereas it's powerful and important to do that, especially when you know how to make sense of and unentangle those thoughts can be great. But we don't always have that information. The body is often more straightforward. And so, can we begin to sense into what is actually happening in our body? Can we begin to actually map? Oh, when I'm angry, I tend to feel it here in my chest or in my hands. Um, or my depression is not just thoughts in my head or the absence of stuff, but it's actually a sense of my spine feels loose and not firm and not supported. If we can begin to put words to it, it also gives us more clarity and also gives us more power to use our body to actually help ourselves feel better. So if I know that happy and excited feels like this with a strong back and open cheeks and a nice smile, then even if I'm not feeling great, moving into this body position actually also can help control or influence the thoughts of our mind and our emotions to move towards happiness. And again, that's something that we can really learn how to cultivate over time. The diaphragmatic breathing. So, diaphragmatic breathing is a really important body approach, but really it's one of the most powerful ways to shift our energy levels. And so, there are various breath work practices that we can engage in to help shift our energy. Whether we're feeling excited and alert, that moves into anxiety, and then we need to calm down, or we're feeling fuzzy and disconnected, and we just need to feel connected to the present moment, or we're feeling low energy and tired, or maybe even feels like depression. How do we use the breath to move our energy and move into a state that we want to be in so that we can take action? Intuitive movement. So, this is also where, when we begin to listen to the body wants to heal from the traumas that we experience. And so, even if we can't pinpoint, well, this is the experience that harmed me, this is what I need to process. If we develop relationship with our body, we're able to listen to the wisdom. Just following its movements will help to adjust the things that just don't serve us, will guide us automatically through a process of releasing. And if you're like, wait, what? That sounds confusing. Don't worry. That's not something we talk a whole lot about. In the therapeutic community, anyway, we've prioritized mental and emotional processing that we don't realize the importance of body based practices. We're getting better as a therapeutic community at talking about these things, but it's very much true. I would say that lots of faith based communities use this form of processing. When you're engaging in movement as part of your spiritual practice, sometimes what you're doing is also releasing these traumas or difficult experiences that don't serve you and shifting your body to be more able to focus, to take on the posture that allows you to do what actually is supportive to you in your wellness. And then soul, so kind of transitioning well into soul practices. Um, that can mean connecting with the natural world and just tuning in there. It can be connecting with your faith-based systems, and it can be connecting to supportive others, to support soul work. Okay. So let's see. For some people that like to really keep track of things from this place of mind, body, soul, of getting into the heart work, having daily routines that support your accountability with the things that you chose as most important. So if I go back to this real quick, right? So maybe you said, you know what, I want to make a practice of just journaling. I'm not going to list out all my thoughts, but I'm just going to journal and see what comes up. I'm also just going to, on a daily basis, see what's going on in my body because I know that I tend to get fuzzy and disconnect. Oh, and oh my goodness, I skipped nourishing your body with routines, movement, food, and sleep. And so that's another body-based practice, right? Um, and spending time in the natural world or connect with my faith-based community. That's important to me. Maybe those are the specific things that you choose to track instead of tracking all the things that they say you're supposed to track, right? So these are just examples that you may choose to track it in a format like this on a daily basis, or maybe that feels too involved. And what really feels more meaningful is just on a weekly basis, picking what are the top 3 or 4 things that you felt were going to be important and just kind of identifying on a weekly basis some of those things. And then on a monthly basis, you may choose to guide the practices, or you may choose to use an affirmation tracker. So these same challenges that you may have identified some challenges from your holistic wellness audit, saying, okay, you know what, I'm really low in the area of my romantic relationship. Let me create an affirmation that's specifically focused on that romantic relationship. And then what I'm tracking is not even any things that I'm doing outside of, have I been affirming myself in this area? Or how affirmed do I feel in those areas? So those are just examples. And then updating your storylines. So again, this is deeper work that often gets done in the context of therapy. But in general, if you are interested in that affirmation tracker, it can be helpful to get clear on what are the specific beliefs that are driving the challenges that I'm having in different areas. So to kind of bring it all together, maybe you did your holistic wellness audit and you saw that, you know what, finances is really a struggle. I have this situation where I put all these plans together, I start to do really well, and then in a moment of stress, I blow it all and I start emotionally eating. I didn't even finish the food half the time, but sometimes I have to go buy the food. And then I'm splurging on Amazon, and before you know it, my budget is blown. Well, when you go down into the root of it, you realize that the root of that is feeling like, hey, actually, you've been saving for a house, but you don't feel good enough for home ownership. And so every time you start to get to a certain point and stresses arise in your life, you have the thought, I can't handle the things that come up. How am I going to handle navigating challenges that happen in a house? And, if the AC breaks, it's my responsibility, all those kinds of things. And those are the thoughts that are leading you then to go and blow your money in all of these different areas. But if we're not aware of that, we blame ourselves. But when we are aware of that, there are things that we can do, certainly through trauma processing, but also sometimes it's affirming what you want to be true for yourself instead of I'm not good enough. It is I am good enough. And the affirmation that you create is I am, I'm worthy of financial abundance in my life. I'm capable of supporting my household and my needs. I'm capable of addressing challenges as they come up. I have resources to help me if I need to, right? And so, specific ways to create those affirmations that are specifically focused on the needs that you've identified for yourself. Okay, so rather than the journal prompt, again, I want to offer some time for us Two, for us to share for those of you who want to. You may choose to share in the chat, and that's great. But if you would like to be on camera and share your experience, or if you would like to be off mic and share your experience, the time is now. What has this been like for you? Is there a goal that you set for yourself that you want to say out loud? Is there an activity or a practice that you would like to incorporate into your well-being? What's coming up? The floor is yours. Okay, so just checking the chat, I have some DMs. So just having some financial goals that you set and that you'd like to see come true, hopefully by the summertime. And so absolutely affirming you in those financial goals you've identified for yourself, that by summertime that you'll be in a better place with that. Also, just from the chat, seeing, that this has been enlightening in the type of support that I need to heal. The holistic support approach resonates with you. Yeah, absolutely. And so, one, we're not a one size fit all. And two, we are not just one thing. And so, having practices that allow us to be all of who we are and that are equipped to engage all the parts of who we are, uh, it just hits different and allows us to finally get unstuck. It gives us the clarity that we need to move out of our heads and trying to, organize it all in our minds into our heart space so that we can actually feel it. And what I mean by heart space is, can we feel it and sense what it is that we want or need for ourselves in our bodies? Do we have resources that emotionally resonate with us that we can then move into action? It is no wonder that so many of us are confused and stuck when you think that there are these 5 layers of our holistic mental health, our 5 layers of who we are. And then I think from our wellness audit, 8 different domains of functioning. What, 8 times 5? That's 40 different combinations of issues that we're often trying to navigate, and it makes it difficult. And so when you have a holistic wellness framework, it gives you the framework that you need to categorize what's what, but also to figure out what you need to do first, second, next, and go from there. So thank you. And so healing your inner child, I want to feel, or I feel that that's big for me. And once I do, a lot will fall into place. Absolutely. So speaking from my own experiences and experiences of now the hundreds of clients that, I've been able to work with, especially with the inner child work, is that we don't realize that so much of us that's hurting is because of stuff that happened back then. It's not that you don't know what to do. It's not that you're not capable. It's not that you're not worthy. It's not that you don't deserve it. It's not that you can't control your life. It's that there's a little girl, a little one back there that went through something that she didn't quite understand and still hurting. And she never received the support that she needed. She didn't have someone to say, hey, of course this was hard. You're not alone. I'm sorry this happened to you, but I got you. I'm going to help you. And when we can identify the little versions of us that have been hurt and needed help, and then give them the help that they need, it can change everything. Okay. I could have been in a depressive state, sleeping my day away, crying in bed about different feelings or other, but I chose to spend it with a group of ladies who are also struggling in their own way, benefiting a bit, if not a lot, from this time, gaining all this valuable information. Thank you, Kim and ladies. Ooh, I felt that. I feel that. Thank you for being here. You chose to be here, as you said. And because you chose to be here, I hope that you receive something supportive. But also, I know I personally benefited from hearing from you, and I imagine others have as well. Thank you for being here. This has helped me to recognize where I need to heal, organize, and take action at. It's teaching me to be gentle with myself and take my time with my beautiful journey. Therapy for sure is needed. So I'm hearing more clarity on what needs to happen and more gentleness with ourselves. This world throws so much at us. It throws so much at us. And so when we feel the call to move toward gentleness with ourselves, it's a beautiful thing. And I'm hearing just yes, yes, and yes, affirmation to what's being said, yes to all of the above. Moving towards healing is not impossible and it isn't going to be perfect, and that's okay. We deserve healing, love, success, growth, and more. Thank you for reframing the healing process. You're so welcome. And thank you for your words. I was like feeling, I'm like, yes, that's an affirmation that I may keep with me. And then this has been super helpful. Thank you. I noticed since that I'm goal oriented, and that has worked out great for me professionally and business wise. Sometimes the same approach wasn't working in my personal life and my mental health space. Ooh, such a big one. I needed therapy to help me fill in the gaps, which is self love. One of my company's best selling products is our Posh Planner, manifesting gratitude and budget planner all in one. Okay. And I practice what I preach and use it. But the mental health and tools um, help me when I'm overwhelmed and I'm in the thick of it. The holistic mental health aspect aligns with everything that I believe in. I just need help balancing everything and remembering there's still a lot to learn and having the tools in the moment as well as reflecting and growing. Now I'm interested in your planner. Go ahead and drop the link in the chat if you'd like to. um, but you know, absolutely. It's one of those things of, yeah, even when we know what to do, it can be a lot. And just because one strategy is the best strategy for one area of our life, our professional, our career life, doesn't mean that those are the same strategies that are going to help you move through when it comes to your relationships or your personal growth or your finances specifically. And so it's a journey of finding what are the tools that support me in each of these areas and with each of the challenges that can come up. And just the more we ground back into what are the approaches that support me, even if we're not exactly sure what all fits, finding a community that can just be with you and hold space as we figure it out can sometimes make all the difference. And I know we don't know each other, but I feel connected to all the folks in this call. Community is a beautiful thing, even if it's just for a short while. Mm, absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel connected to each and every one of you as well. Thank you for being here in this space. And yes, Portia, thank you for dropping this into the chat, myposhplanner.com. um, I sent out a message today to take care of yourself today to others, and that was my plan. And then I got the invite, and it was definitely a self care day and will continue to be reset for the week coming. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your stories and transparency. Community and connection is so important. Loving the sisterhood here today. Ah, my goodness. And I have to keep remembering I don't know everything, and that's okay. Beautiful, wonderful, affirming each and every one of you today. We have been together for, at this point, over 3 hours. When we started the day, we set some gentle intentions for our experience, for the things that we wanted to release in our life that just no longer serves us. And we were able to get some clarity, not just on the things that don't serve us, but what were the memories from the past that we want to pull in and enhance in our life as we move forward. We were also able to get clear on what are the specific things that get in the way of actually moving into action on our goals for this coming year. And through a holistic wellness audit, identify the specific, areas that you want to work on for this year and the specific strategies that may be able to support you with meeting those goals. Now, throughout this process, many of you have identified, yes, therapy is something that's going to be helpful for me. Coaching is going to be something that's supportive to me. And so now, in this final portion here, I want to invite you to continue to share what this experience was like for you, anything that feels good, anything that you want to name. But I'm also going to begin to discuss specific opportunities for working with us here at Healing Insight. I yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Uh, Button here have been asking about our therapy services. So we do have therapy and wellness services available throughout the state of Florida. We are in network with several insurances, and I'm going to share my screen and pull up some resources for you so that you can actually access that here. All right, so here we go. Okay, so one, just wanting to share with you our website. So this is yourhealinginsight.com. If you're ready to get started and you wanted to schedule a consultation, the fastest way to do that is just click on contact us, and you'll be taken to our, um, oh, I should probably share the screen, right? Okay, so now you should see our page. You can just click on contact us and you will be taken to our contact us screen. It's the weekend now, so you could call us, but we probably won't get back to you until tomorrow. You can also schedule a consultation. We do have a few consultations. I've opened up some more availability for Monday and Tuesday. But maybe you're already one of those that were on our, our wait list and you're ready to get started. You've heard enough. I'm actually going to pop another link into the chat. So this is the first one if you want to go ahead and schedule a consultation. But if you're ready to get started, the next link that I'm going to share for you is for clients, request appointment. So this is where you will actually be able to request a appointment with one of the clinicians on our team. So Delsa, Floribeth, myself, and Soraya. So I'm going to share that Delsa, Floribeth, and Soraya are accepting new clients, and you can feel free to take a look at their availability and request that appointment right away. Briefly to share, Delsa really is a therapist that works with adults and teens. She utilizes a cognitive behavioral therapy approach. So she helps you connect your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors in the work that you're doing. She is a Black woman and a proud Haitian American woman who is very much equipped to navigate challenges related to racial identity, but also workplace trauma and support for helping professionals. In fact, all of our clinicians are able to provide support for helping professionals. Floribeth, she specializes actually in hypnotherapy. And so if you were interested in incorporating hypnosis into treatment of depression and anxiety, she has a host of experiences supporting folks with addressing those symptoms. And then Soraya as well, similar to Floribeth, is able to provide cognitive behavioral therapy support. If you're wanting to do inner child work, if you're wanting to process traumas, all of them are able to support you. Notice I left myself out, and that's because I'm at almost capacity with my caseload, except if you were interested in EMDR intensives, which I talked about a bit earlier. Again, EMDR intensives are those intensives for 3 to 4 hour sessions. And the way to do that is to schedule a consultation with me. And then we can talk about the intensives and make sure that you're a good fit. You can also send me a private message if you want the EMDR intensive, and I'll get back to you there. But that is all I have for now. Let me stop the share here so I can be present with you all on the screen. Thank you for being here. I'm wishing you so well as you move into action on your wellness goals in 2024. Bye, everyone.